So it's not a small 401k that is going to rob millennials of their retirement. It's really Onlyfans that will rob millennials of their retirement. The current retirement statistics are abysmal. I made a chat with ChatGPT and found out that half of seniors 65 and older count on Social Security for more than half of their income. A quarter of that relies on Social Security for almost all of their money, and 40% of them have nothing else at all. So if boomers and Gen Xers are already broke, then what chances do millennials have? Spoiler, we're screwed. So one of the big problems in the West right now is social media consumption. It really influences us on how we think, how we date, and how we make money. In my last video, why I think millennials will be homeless in 20 years, I was telling a story about a friend of mine who was always comparing himself with his friends, because what his friends would do was they would post on social media about all the new toys, about all the vacations and cars that they were enjoying. And my friend was feeling really bad because he has all these stuff that he sees his friend enjoying, but he himself does not get to enjoy because he doesn't make as much money. And then things took a worse for social media with the introduction of OnlyFans. Then what happened is, on top of social media where we get comparison traps, we have girls seeing other girls make a killing on OnlyFans. They would just see these girls on OnlyFans showing some skin and making a killing and then going on wild vacations, and you start thinking, man, it is that easy? Maybe I'll do the same thing. Maybe that is my shortcut to fame, fortune, and vacations and yacht parties and flying all around the world and posting about it so all of my friends can be envious and jealous of me. Why do we do that? Because we live in America. We like to show off. We like to make people envious of us. The only thing is that most girls don't realize that 90% of the money made on the platform actually goes to the top 10% of OnlyFans models, which means that the average OnlyFans model only really have 21 subscribers. And when you have 21 subscribers, that's not retire me now money, that's gas money. Now, according to US literacy statistics, 54% of Americans actually can't read past a 6th grade level. And when you can't read past a 6th grade level, you actually lose critical thinking. As a result, women that don't have that critical thinking will be more impressionable. So they are trapped into a game of OnlyFans that is rigged from the start. The sad part is that the winners make it look super easy. I post, I get paid. Unfortunately, those skills don't transfer to real life skills. Once they want to get out of the OnlyFans game, they get out. But it depends on whether they get out with the money still there, because most of them actually blow the money. Because when you make that much money from OnlyFans and you don't know how to invest it, you don't know how to invest smart, they end up broke, sometimes even homeless. And here's the catch. Once you drop nudes online, it'll damage your reputation forever. Your families will see it, your future partners will see it, future employers will see it. That's why building a stable career, building a family, finding a future partner, it gets 10 times harder the moment you drop that first nude. So I remember I met this girl at a dance here in Dallas. And when I first met her, I thought, man, she is super cute. She is super polite. She has this beautiful smile. I was enamored. I thought, wow, she's great. She looks like marriage material. And then later on, I forgot to get her number. So I stalked her on Facebook and I found her. But what was odd was I found multiple profiles of her. Now there was this one main profile with a very legit business looking like profile with not a lot. It looks like she started it rather recently. It was very clean. But like I said, there was a lot of multiple other accounts and I was curious. So I started clicking into these multiple accounts, and what I found was a lot of explicit photos. And what I discovered was, boom, she was an ex-OnlyFans model, and now she wanted to clean up her history. But people downloaded her photos and created accounts of her. And even if I didn't want to, unconsciously, I started putting her into another box. And whenever I see her now, I am still always polite, very friendly. But whereas before I knew this part of her, I was ready to ask her out. But now that incentive, that motivation, it's completely gone. But what does this have to do with every millennial being robbed of their retirement? Well, the thing is, even if a girl is not that successful on OnlyFans, even if she only has 21 subscribers, she's still a supplier. And for every supplier, there's a consumer. And that's where the real destruction begins. I'll be the first to admit, porn warped my mind. It started in my adolescence and it continued all the way to my 30s. And porn and OnlyFans, I really think they are in the same bucket. And that's where the crack starts. That's where the destruction begins. You know, addiction is when you know something is destroying you, but you keep doing it. But that was the problem. I didn't know I was an addict. You know what I told myself? I told myself, I only watch porn once or twice a day. I've got this under control. But the problem was, I watched it every single day when I was alone. Every night, I'd go on Pornhub and I had to watch some sort of content. And as a result, it really warped my relationships, the way I saw women, myself, everything. Back then I didn't even notice it, but I was seeing every girl that I met like a porn star. And Covenant Eyes, which is an app to help guys recover from porn, reported that 78% of men do regularly consume porn. I really think it's higher. But think about it. If most boyfriends and husbands are addicted to porn, what do you think happens in the relationships? Wives feel neglected, kids feel ignored, arguments turn into divorces. I know that in some Christian relationships, Christian marriages, porn is the big reason for divorces. Actually happened to a brother of mine. All of that means more single parent households. And if you watched my last video, why 2 generations will die alone, it actually talked about how in single parent households, the kids actually grow up earning less, struggling more, and a lot of them actually end up in juvie. Does that sound like our future taxpayers that will fund our retirement? Exactly. And here's the catch. The catch is that this is the good case. The worst case is that men completely check out. They get medicated on porn and Onlyfans, and once they're medicated, they don't want to do anything else. If they're horny, they'll just go get that resolved from Onlyfans or porn. There's no incentive to go out and meet real women. There's no incentive to go get your horniness handled by a real woman. They stop chasing women, and as a result, they stop building families, and they ultimately stop caring about building any sort of future at all. Let's face it, the best way to get sex is to have a partner. That is also the hardest way. The easier way, which most of us prefer, is to hop on OnlyFans or watch porn and blow your load. That's the alternative. But by taking the easier way out, what happens is that birth rates crash because there's no incentive to go out there and meet real women. And when birth rates crash, fewer families get built. And when fewer families get built, that means there's gonna be less taxpayers. And when there's less taxpayers and more people to have to fund in retirement, the money needs to come from somewhere. And where that money is gonna come from is gonna come from the government printing money. And when the government prints money, that is how inflation is made. And inflation eats away everything. So imagine this. Imagine that in 2054, you're going to get $1,500 in Social Security. Amazing, right? But groceries is gonna cost you $500. But there's not enough taxpayers because people didn't have kids 30 years ago. So the government prints money, and the next year, 2055, groceries actually cost $575, an increase of $75 over a year. However, the catch is your Social Security didn't increase. It didn't rise. It stayed at $1,500. So tell me this, your groceries got more expensive. We didn't even talk about rent yet. How the heck are you going to manage more expensive groceries on top of rent? As I was writing this script, something hit me. It's probably healthier to go get a prostitute than to visit OnlyFans, minus the STDs. And I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. What OnlyFans does is it normalizes fake transactional relationships. But when you go get a prostitute, at least you feel it more. Why? Because it's still taboo. You still have to drive up to the brothel, open the door, pick the girl you want to do the dirty with. You know it's wrong, your conscience stings, but lust still takes over. But you know what? At least there is still a human connection. At least there's still one-on-one conversation. There is touch. And for guys like me, where my love language is physical touch, that matters. The thing is, most of the guys that end up on OnlyFans aren't there for connection. I think that they're really there for addiction. And addiction is what breeds anxiety, loneliness, and distrust. I was listening to a John Delaney podcast. A woman called in and she was like, Dr. John, I'm at the end of my ropes. I found my husband cheating again. And you'd think that, oh my God, who's the woman? And then we dug in a little deeper and actually found out that he wasn't cheating on her with any woman, real life woman. He was actually cheating on her via OnlyFans. The first time around, he was saying that, I'm sorry, I admit I have an addiction. I'm going to cut it out. I promise you I'm never going to do it again. And then she found the credit card statements. That's when she felt felt neglected after finding that out, and the kids felt ignored. And the husband, she was like, you know, he looks unmotivated, he looks checked out. It's like he's useless. He's not doing anything that I need him to do as a husband. And as a result, what we have is a man with some real potential to produce, to build wealth, to build an empire, wasting it on pixels. And you know what? For us guys, that doesn't count as cheating. I mean, subscribing to OnlyFans, it's not cheating. Cheating is when you sleep with a guy that's not me. And for me, I did not sleep with another woman. So how can you call that cheating, right? But women do call that cheating. That is emotional cheating because you're experiencing an emotional intimacy with a woman that isn't her, even though it's online through a web and you have never met her in real life. That is where the anger, the distrust, the anxiety shows up. And if it doesn't get addressed, it's a thing that's going to rip marriages apart. And that's the logical explanation for you guys that need it. So every Saturday I go to this Christian men's support group, right? And recently what happened was there's this young 20-year-old kid, you know, he still hasn't grown his first beard, it looks like. And he came in here and admitted that he had a porn problem. And he was thinking, he said to us that, you know, once I have a wife or a girlfriend, this is just gonna magically resolve itself. And we all knew for a fact that no, it is, because that never happens. And here's another twist for those OnlyFans girls who actually crush it on OnlyFans. You know, they're in the top 10%, and they're actually out earning a lot of the men that's in their age range, in their 20s, let's say. It completely flips the dating script because women usually want a provider and a protector, right? And they rarely date down. What happens is that now that she is at a different income level, a higher income level, there's rarely any men that's going to meet that criteria, which means that she's dealing with a smaller pool of potential men that she would find attractive enough to date, to build something with. But the problem is that those men, they might keep her as a side chick, but they will never choose her as a wife. And those same men, you know, they're rich, they're probably handsome and have everything together, because to get to that level, you have to be that. They probably have a lot of options themselves. So what happens is that this girl will have a bunch of guys paying her for her fake intimacy while she's out there trying to tie this man down that's only willing to keep her as a side chick. It's pretty twisted, isn't it? So here's the real punchline. OnlyFans doesn't just ruin relationships and our future retirement, but it completely removes eligible bachelors from the dating market. Instead of leveling up, becoming men that women find attractive, we run and hide ourselves into fake intimacy of OnlyFans. Instead of leveling up and becoming worthy partners, we escape into fake ones, which means fewer eligible bachelors, fewer relationships, fewer families, fewer children, and most importantly, fewer taxpayers. And women aren't immune either, because what happens is they go on Instagram, they see all these OnlyFans models, and they're all funneling users through Instagram, through TikTok, and they're watching them, raking it in and thinking like, hey, if they can do it, and if making money on OnlyFans is that easy, I'm gonna go on OnlyFans too. I'm gonna slip a nip, rake it all in, and take my retirement and go live in Europe for the rest of my life, sipping wine and margaritas while my friends are slaving away in the corporate 9-to-5. So they make the decision. They take the dive, sign up for OnlyFans, start trying to funnel users, and find out actually how hard it actually is. A few will succeed, but most will fail, and the ones that fail also fail with ruined reputations. And you can't get far with a ruined reputation. And you think that the few women that actually make it on OnlyFans are the real winners, but they don't win all that big either, because what happens is now they have a reputation. They have a reputation as an OnlyFans models. So what happens is they get paid by withdrawn men who want this fake intimacy with them while they're out there trying to nail down the guy that they really want. The rich guy, the handsome guy, the guy that has options. And this guy, he might keep her as a side chick, he might smash, but will he ever take her home to mom? Will he ever want to marry her, build a family, build an empire with her? Never. Why? Which means there's gonna be no future kids, there's gonna be no future taxpayers. So what the hell is going to happen when millennials and Gen Zs like us are going to retire? Who's going to fund us?